Hi everyone, my name is Iris and I run the blog lifeofiris.com. We talk about cruises, crew life, and travel. Now, a lot of times on this channel, I'll dive deep into big itineraries, into world cruises, things like that. Today we're going to talk about crew life things. So last night, my husband and I went out to dinner and we went to an Irish pub. He's Scottish. Irish pub is not the same, but it is the closest that we have here in Vermont. So we went out to dinner and we're sitting at the bar top and there's a couple next to us and we end up chatting with them because I am a chatty person. And when it came to our life living and working on a cruise ship, they had questions. That's pretty normal. Most people have questions when they find out that we, live and work on a ship. And it made me realize that most likely some people out there also have these questions. Definitely not a traditional life that you see, at least where I'm from. You don't have a lot of people that are working away at sea, and especially also doing this with my husband. So today we're just going to talk through some frequently asked questions that I get about my life working on a cruise ship. Okay, so our first question, we're going to start at the beginning, which is how did I get the job? And so when you work on a cruise ship, there are a few ways to get a job on board, and that depends on what job you have most of the time. Now, in my case, I was 22, fresh out of college. I knew I wanted to travel, but I didn't have the money to travel because I just got out of college. And my mom had taken me on a couple of cruises when I was a kid. I thought it looked like fun. So I went on to, actually there's a couple of things that I did. The first thing I did was I looked up different cruise lines that treated their crew well. So I'd been on cruises with my mom. I'd heard the rumors, crew, just not great work situation on board. I think that does exist on some lines. I think it's getting better, but so I wanted to make sure that I was putting myself in a place that I thought I could, be pretty happy. And so I looked up different cruise lines that were considered good to work for. And then I went on each of those companies' websites, went down to the very bottom of the page, and this is still true, all the way at the bottom of most major cruise lines pages, you're going to see a little thing that says careers. And if you click on that button, it will guide you to how to apply for jobs, what jobs are available, what the process looks like to work for that cruise line. It does depend a bit as to which job you have on board, what the hiring process is. I have always worked directly for the cruise line. And so when I applied, I pressed that career button, page came up with different jobs that were available. I looked through jobs that I might have qualifications that worked for, jobs that I thought could be fun and interesting, and then I sent my application in. Kind of just like you would for a regular job. I wrote a cover letter, I had my resume, sent it all in, and then heard back from the corporate office. Then that whole process began. So that was my experience. I know it's very different if you're working for instance, a revenue partner. So if you're working for, the shops, which is the retailers, if you're working for the casino, if you're working for the spa, if you're working for basically anyone that isn't the company itself, then you're going to get hired by that revenue partner, and then they'll assign you to a ship. And then there's also, like my husband, for instance, he's British, he's an engineer. There is an organization called Viking Recruitment, I think is their title, might be different than that, but Viking, and they basically organize contracts for deck and engine officers in the UK. And so he's technically employed by Viking and not by our cruise line. So there's a few different paths to be able to work on board. My specific one was literally, I just found a company that I wanted to work for. I looked at what jobs they had available and I applied. So it was kind of like applying for a normal job, except for my first day was flying to Seattle to go to Alaska cruising. And it was 5 years that I was with the company before I actually met the person that hired me. So that part was a little different, but cruise lines are advertising on more job sites now. So if you're looking at the major, career-looking search engines, there are quite a few cruise jobs that are listed on there now. There's also a few cruise job websites like allcruisejobs.com that have different positions listed. So there you go. The next question that I get is, what do I do on board? So my current function with the cruise line is a role called media manager, and basically I'm in charge of all the digital and printed materials that guests will see. So this includes the daily program, the TVs that you see around the ship that show advertisements for the different, revenue partners, so the shops and the casino and things like that, but then also the signs that'll say what event's happening here, what event's happening there, the different things that are happening around the ship, as well as your stateroom TVs, and then a bit with the app, the mobile app that's on the, that goes with the cruise line as well. So it's kind of a little bit of all of those things. Probably my favorite part of the job is that I get to interact with every department on board. So I have to coordinate things with pretty much everybody, which is good. I like chatting with people. I like getting to know about other roles. In this role, I have learned more about other roles on board than I ever had before. So it's really given me a lot of insight into some of the challenges, what other people on board are going through, what they need to succeed, and then hopefully I can help them succeed. So that is my current function on board. All right, the next question that I get is, where do I sail to? So there's definitely a perception out there that cruises go to the Caribbean. And I think most of the time when people ask me where I sail to, they're kind of expecting me to say that. I think there's also a bit of a perception that where you sail is the same every time, or it's relatively close to the same every time. So one thing that I'm very happy my past self did when I was applying to cruise lines is the cruise line that I'm working for sails all the way around the world. There's a world cruise every year, there's a bunch of Grand Voyages, there's a lot of voyages that are in the 30 plus day range, which tend to have much more interesting itineraries. And so where I'm going to is typically different every contract, and it's kind of hard to sum up in just a quick, short answer. So my next contract is actually one of the ones that's easier to explain because, so I'll join in Fort Lauderdale, do a little bit in the Caribbean, then do a repositioning cruise through the Panama Canal, and then spend the summer up in Alaska. That one's pretty easy to explain. My last contract, we started in Italy, spent a month and a half-ish in the Mediterranean, then made our way across the ocean, then did a 1-month Amazon River cruise, then a little bit in the Caribbean. So that was a little bit more complicated. I've done cruises that, 3-month-long cruises that circle the Pacific. I've done South Pacific cruises. I kind of everywhere. And so where we sail to is everywhere, which is super wonderful. I'm very, very privileged that I get to go all the way around the world, that I get to see so many places. But where I go to, it changes, and it's most of the time, I'm very lucky for this, it's not just a simple one sentence, oh, I'm going here. So that's where I'm going to this time. We'll see where I go next time. So I mentioned that my husband also works on board, and that inevitably leads to a lot of follow-up questions. So the first question that we get is, do my husband and I get to sail together? And the answer to that is most of the time, yes. So getting our contracts to line up is not simple. It is complicated. It requires compromise, and it can be very, very frustrating. I'm pretty privileged. We're pretty lucky that most of the time, we can line up. Most of the time, our corporate office is working with us to try to make it so that we can line up. But it's certainly not a simple thing. And I do have a blog post that's literally all about this. So I'll leave a link to that below. But Yeah, so right now we get to sail together pretty well. So this next contract, I'm joining a little bit before him, and then we'll leave the same day. So we're only off by, literally a few weeks this time. So on the scale of things, absolutely cannot complain. Very, very lucky, but it is not always a simple process, and we're grateful every time that we get to line up as closely as we do. So do we live together on board? So yes, we live together on board. When we're both on the ship at the same time, we share a cabin. He is my roommate, I am his roommate, and that's kind of that. Both of our positions are entitled to our own cabins on board, but most of the time when we're both on at the same time, my cabin kind of gets put back into the pool of cabins for the crew office to assign people to and use. And we stay in his cabin because his cabin is nicer. So we do get to live together on board. Not all married couples get to live together. It has to do with what your rank is on board, what category of cabin you're assigned to. There's a whole bunch of kind of caveats with that, but for our specific situation, when we're on board together, we get to live in the same cabin. All right, so the next question is, did we meet on board? Yes, we did. So this question sometimes, we'll be out and about in society and someone will hear my accent and then hear his accent and they're like, how did you two meet? They just assume that, a random American girl and a Scottish guy didn't just happen to be in the same place at the same time, which in this case, we were on a cruise ship. We met in the crew bar. Fairly soon after they hear his accent and my accent, they then follow up with, so where do you live? That does get a little bit complicated. So there's kind of a misconception that if you marry someone from another country, you just automatically get citizenship or residency or a right to live in that person's country. And that is not the way that it works. So, I married someone from the UK. There is a path for me to get citizenship, but it's not just instant, and it is very expensive, and it requires multiple levels of visas and a certain amount of time that I have to spend in that country each year to maintain that visa and head towards citizenship. And similarly, him coming this way. There's also all sorts of tax implications, and it's all very complicated. And honestly, when you're young and naive and you're just falling in love and you think, hey, this is wonderful, I get to go to Scotland all the time, you don't think about all of the complications that come from marrying someone from another country. There's a lot of them. So eventually there'll be a citizen, like I'll probably get citizenship in the UK or work toward residency there. But for right now, I am a legal resident of the United States. He is a legal resident of the United Kingdom. And because there's kind of fluidity in terms of being able to be a visitor in each person's country, and this is the part that is the kicker, because we work away at sea for over half of the year, we're never in violation of visiting each other's countries, because we're literally never on land for more than 3 months at a time. And most of the time we split up that vacation between Scotland and the US. So yeah, it's weird. I don't live in the same country as my husband, but that is where our life is at right now. All right, so there's a little bit about me, my life on board with my husband, how that all works. If you have more questions, please leave a comment about it. I'll be happy to answer everything that I can. Also, I'll be making more videos about crew life, but don't worry, I'm still going to keep going doing itinerary videos as well, because one of the things I love about cruising is how much of the world you get to see. There's a lot more itineraries out there than Alaska and the Caribbean, although I do love Alaska and the Caribbean, so there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'm so excited that my next contract is going to be a little bit of fun in the sun and then a lot of glaciers. So please like and subscribe, really appreciate it. Also, please head over to my blog, lifeofiris.com. I have a ton of content on there about life as a crew member, from how you get to your contract to how many hours you're allowed to work, whether or not you get days off, the differences between port days and sea days, and what IPM is. There is a lot of content on there. So please head on over there, and wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I hope you have a fabulous day.